And there I go again with this whole mic situation. For starters, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Nick Files. It's been about a good 2 weeks since the last episode, which I did have to push back due to, as many of you guys know, due to a work-related accident that I had with my leg 2 weeks ago, and unfortunately, that had me postpone the latest episode of the show for a good 2 weeks after having to try to go through a lot of healing to eventually get my leg back into shape, if you will. So, yeah, I do apologize for it, but of course, accidents happen. So obviously, it was beyond my control, obviously. But now that I'm officially back, we're gonna officially pick up right back to where. Wait, hang on one second here. That's weird. Sorry, one of the destinations was disconnected for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why, but oh, that's kind of weird. I'll handle with that later. But anyways, so for that, with that being said, we're gonna finally wrap up. I know we're now over a month since I first started this slideshow, presentation on the Great Tri-State Tornado of 1925. But the good part is we're just right around the corner from finishing this up. We're also going to be talking about a couple other events that are involved with this slideshow that talked about things that, different types of events that occurred, years after the tri-state tornado. So, in other words, we're going to be focusing more on the aftermath of how things occur, what occurred after the tri-state tornado itself. And then we're going to get kind of the evolution of weather forecasting after this events, if that makes any sense. So without further ado, now let's say how about we finally decide to wrap this slideshow, put the story to an end with the final part of the slideshow. So without further ado, let me get the next slide. Oh, and also just to let everybody know too, it looks like it will just be me for tonight. Sam and some of the other show hosts are unavailable, which is fine with me because it's actually good to finally be running a show on my own again after quite a long time. So, anyways, let's begin. So, give me 1 second here, and we'll have this ready in just a second. Also, I just want to check to see who's all checking it out, saying, watching in the chat. Oh, we got, I don't know if that's coming from my side. Oh, that's coming from my personal. What's up, Gary? Good to see you. All right, hold on one sec. I'm just trying to get the slideshow to appear on the screen. Let's see here. It's weird. I wonder why it's not showing up. Let's try this again. Okay, that was bizarre. Let's try this again. That's really okay. That's really strange. It's not showing up. Let's see here. What's going on here? Bear with me, folks. I'm just trying to. I'm not sure what's going on here. For some reason, this is not wanting to cooperate with me. Yeah, this has never happened before. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay. Now I see what the problem is. For some reason the screen was not sharing. See, I'm still trying to get used to using, wait, hang on. Sharing system is only. Oh my god. Okay, for some reason it was saying that sharing the screen without sharing your system sound. Oh, okay, that's no big deal. Sorry again. See, I'm still getting used to using EveMux, so it's kind of proven itself to be kind of a little challenge. Pickle Tom's in the chat. All right. Okay, I think we finally got it. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right. So we were talking about where we ended up last time, from what I remember talking about, was we were showing some of the aftermath photographs and footage of the damage of this deadly tornado that followed. And I think what we were about to get to next was focusing primarily on the newspaper articles that followed us. As usual, like I always did, I did try to collect as much of the newspaper articles and damage aftermath photos that I was able to find. So I think what you guys are going to see is going to be quite not only interesting but sad too, of what was created after this event. To start off with, a lot of thick black headlines and super superlatives would be issued about the great tri-state tornado of 1925. I don't have to really say too much because honestly, I think these newspaper articles will definitely speak for themselves. So I'll give you guys just a second here just to read it on your own. If you guys can read it on your screen. And while I give a few seconds, I just want to get to what Tom just said. Send you a thing in the Minecraft chat. You don't need to listen. All right. Sounds like Tom, I gotta ask, is it something good or is it something bad? All right, so continuing onwards. So, this right here, I believe, was probably ended up becoming one of the most notorious newspaper articles following the tri-state tornado. And yeah, as you could see, originally they thought before that it was over 1,000 deaths. Of course, they did drop the number a little bit, if you will, but in the end, the death toll was still pretty high. It just wasn't 1,000 as it originally was said to be. Oh, this right here, obviously, first one that was in Murfreesboro. This one right here, obviously, is clearly in DeSoto. Just once again showing like how houses are just completely leveled. Hello, Natalie. Very sad to see that everybody, just lost everything. Toll increasing. Yep. Yeah, toll increasing. Oh, this was from Marion, just the day after the tornado itself. 61 school perished at Murfreesboro. Jeez. 126 identified at West Frankfort. Storm at Bush. See, I wish I was able to get the full newspaper so I could read the whole thing, but I can only get what they have. Tornado death list 800 or more. Wreckage. Oh, that's the DeSoto High School right there. Yes, Southern Illinois fatality 600 with all hospitals filled. Murfreesboro, West Frankfort, DeSoto, and Gorham suffer heaviest loss of life, which was definitely true. That was among some of the harder hits, if you guys remember from the last slide part of the slideshow. See, once again, they kind of did dramatize a little bit of the numbers. Says 1,444 dead, 2,712 injured in tornado estimate in Indiana and Illinois. From the Daily Journal. Okay. Once again, here's another one. This is from Evansville, Indiana. Over 1,000 deaths. Oh, this was from the Princeton area, Princeton Clarion News. Tornado wrecked South Princeton, toll of 20, which, of course, obviously the death toll, I think, did rise quite a bit because, again, Princeton was another hard hit town. That killed over 40 people there. So that's just only half of what they originally were reporting. This one's here from Indianapolis. I think as we continue on looking at these newspaper articles, eventually it begins to start expanding where other newspaper companies throughout the country, write their own articles regarding, because obviously this was like a nationwide tragedy, when words spread throughout the rest of the country about this. All that tornado left of little town of Griffin, where 68 are dead or missing. Griffin searches and wreckage for bodies or victims. Geez, known dead list increased to 641. State dead in tornado reaches 104. Wind like 104. Wind like terrible giant flails farms. Yeah, it's just you just see everything in this newspaper is not even involving anything else. It's mostly involving the tornado. This is from Muncie Morning Star. That's from Muncie, Indiana. Match limbs with heads to burn torsos. God, that must have been horrible when they found that. Fury of storm like height of war in France. Oh, wait, I think this might be. Isn't that the same? Yeah, it's the same one. Okay, for some reason I accidentally added the same one. Okay, yeah. So later today I'll make sure to remove that because we don't need an extra article like that. And part of it I can clearly see on the corner is kind of torn up. Oh, so here's a few other newspaper articles. It's hard to see these. Oh, these are once again in Princeton. Oh, on this side, oh, that's the Longfellow School right there in Murfreesboro. Then down here, okay, Princeton once again. Oh, this right here is the Bismarck Tribune, which that is a newspaper company out in North Dakota. So now we're starting to see, like I said, now we're starting to see more of the newspapers from other parts of the country writing their own account, well, their own newspapers following this event. Then Brownsville, the Evening Herald, Imperial Valley Press. That's from, let's see. Okay. Oh, this one, Evening Herald. I can't. Oh, that's Brownsville, Texas. And then this one over here, which is a little bit clearer, is El Centro, California. So yeah. So now this is happening all nationwide. Then we got the Evening Star. That one's from Washington, D.C. Another evening. Oh, this is the same company. Yeah, both these are from Washington, D.C., talking about the event. Tornado deaths in 5 states may exceed 1,000. That was when they were talking, obviously, about the entire outbreak as a whole, not just regarding just the tri-state tornado. Okay, the Cordell. Let's see here. The Cordell Dispatch. That's from Cordell, Georgia. Okay, Indianapolis. Once again, this is focusing in the state of Indiana. Tornado, 1,000 people perish in great tornado. Tornado death total may reach 1,000 with 20,000 left homeless, which we're going to get to eventually the ending details of what this tornado truly left behind. Okay, so a few other ones. New Britain Herald. This one is from, New Britain, Connecticut. Up, New York Times, obviously. That explains where that one's from. That's being reported from New York. Omaha Morning Bee, 1,000 die in tornadoes. So obviously Omaha, Nebraska. And 4,000 storm victims. Wow. Again, a little dramatic, but because that's what they originally thought, but obviously it wasn't. Seattle Star, so obviously from Seattle, Washington. Okay, 100. Oh, and how ironic. From a city that I've also done a presentation on, the Galveston Daily News, Galveston, Texas. Hundreds die in storms. Let's see. Oh, this one right here is oh, check this out. This one is actually in French. So this is coming from Paris, France. Yeah, Paris, France. So even France wrote an article about this. So I guess it eventually reached worldwide, and other newspaper companies throughout the world started writing stuff about this. I mean, it was obviously the worst and eventually became the deadliest tornado in U.S. history. So I can't see why other countries would have wrote about it. Oh, so now we get back to watch. Still have a few videos left. Now we get back to looking at some of the survivor interviews of how, what exactly occurred to them and how they were after this tornado struck. So we'll start off with this video. Let me know if you guys could hear this one.
Talk what happened before the tornado and what happened after, because our lives completely changed. In the scattered debris.
Hold on 1 second. Hey, what's up, Lois? Here's a quick question from everyone, because I'm not sure if something's not right. Can anybody? Just a quick question here. Can anybody hear me right now while I have this running? Because I'm playing through one of the studios, and the sound is not going through. Can anyone else hear me right now? Something's not right. Oh, shoot. Okay, hold on 1 second. Because for what... Okay, hang on 1 second, guys. We're having an issue right now. Oh, you can. Okay, what's up, Willie? That is so weird. Bear with me for just a second, guys. Let me try something here. Hey, what's up, Jill? Okay, you guys can hear me. Okay, good. All right, now in that case, let me know if you guys could hear the video then. So give me 1 second here while I get this back up. All right, so let's try this again.
Talk what happened before the tornado and what happened after, because our lives completely changed.
Oh, shoot. Damn it. Sorry about that.
Talk what happened before the tornado and what happened after, because our lives completely changed.
In the scattered debris of what had been Gorham, 34 people lay dead. Much of Murfreesboro was reduced to ashes. After being flattened, the northwest side of the town had burned. The tornado alone had engineered the destruction of DeSoto. What was left of the town was barely recognizable.
We went out the graveyard and there's 22 graves open. One grave, it buried 3, the dad and mother and the daughter.
In West Frankfort, an undertaker collapsed from exhaustion over his lunch. He had been burying tornado victims for 36 hours straight.
Most of them wasn't held over, like they are for funerals now, because there was so many of them.
Dolly Swable had already lost her grandmother, blown from her grandfather's arms. Now her older sister was missing. Newly married and 6 weeks pregnant, she had talked to a storekeeper before taking cover.
She said, "Look, don't that cloud look bad? I sure am scared." And went back in her house, and she's the last one that ever talked to my sister.
The woman was missing for 6 days. When she was found, there was only one way of knowing for sure.
Perform an autopsy to see, and found out she was pregnant. She was blowed over into the GM&O yards and burnt. It was just so cloudy and black you couldn't see anything, even as it was going through to DeSoto.
Dorothy Raymond was one of the few eyewitnesses of the actual funnel cloud. She saw the black pillar of debris as it moved from Murfreesboro to DeSoto, passing within a quarter mile of her family farm, causing no damage and no injuries. The real toll of the storm didn't hit home to her until later, on a visit to a funeral home to identify a badly disfigured neighbor.
I ran out of the building when I saw Mr. Elmore, and then I got in behind the door and ran in them dead bodies, and I wasn't used to that.
Okay, I think I might have. Okay, so these next videos that I have, once again, continue with the survivors, but among one of these interviews that you're about to see is not an actual survivor, but a middle-aged grandson of one of the survivors telling this his account in Griffin, Indiana.
The only way you could get into Griffin was on rail. I had to come in on the railroad. Now, I do remember this. I don't remember whether the grandmother told me this or not, but I've heard this over the years that they brought flatbed cars, rail cars in here, and they put the dead on them. I think they took some to Grayville and some out to Poseville or Sturgisville somewhere. But they loaded the bodies on the flat cars and took them. That's the only way you can get in and out. And the people that survived, they just went and lived with relatives.
Okay. The devastating tornado was cited by Peter J. Thusen as a marked shift in the relation between tornadoes and divine entities in his book, Tornado God, American Religion and Violent Weather. Prior to this, tornadoes were often described as the wrath of God. However, following this tornado, multiple area ministers stated that the tornado was not divine punishment, with one minister from Illinois stating it was not God who hurt Murfreesboro's babies. WGBH TV, a PBS affiliate in Boston, Massachusetts, asserts that John Stewart Curry's painting over... Hang on one second. There was a picture that was supposed to show up. Okay, I guess for some reason, I forgot there was a picture that was supposed to be there, but somehow it was not showing up. Anyways, it asserts that John Stewart Curry's painting Tornado over Kansas visually referenced the tri-state tornado. Among the survivors, the bone saw reaped its grim harvest. Most often, it assisted in cutting people away from their shattered houses, and unfortunately to a much more gruesome degree. Unlike what you hear from other tornado-related destruction, mixed in with the debris were many unattached arms and legs. Which of course that had to have been just a horrifying sight just to look at it. There were the usual There were the usual freak phenomena that are associated with tornadoes. Straw was driven into solid wood. live trees were impaled clean through by 2x4s. In a house in Murfreesboro, as described here in this photograph. You can't see it too well, so you may have to zoom in, or you may have to just look at it on Google Image. But the tornado parked a car on the second floor of a building. So I'll give you guys just a second so you can see it. I just want to get to the comments in the studio real quick. Oh, you could hear an echo? Do you still hear that right now? Just to make sure. Might have been because of the video. Okay, well, I'm going to keep an eye on it just to make sure that everything is working correctly. Oh, we got another video here. So here we go.
It was from my grandmother. She told about coming down here after the tornado was over and helped clean up the dead people. I remember saying that they had rock pellets, glass, little tiny rocks, anything small embedded in their skin. And they'd have to take needles and stuff and pick them out, and get them cleaned up.
And all the neighbor men went. And they worked till late that night, helping to recover the bodies and help to uncover things to get things back to normal. Well, as back to normal as they could.
Okay. Oh, those pictures were not supposed to show up that quickly. No, only on the last minute. Okay, so yeah, it's okay, as what Jill said. No, only on the yeah, I got a feeling it might be because of the videos. That might make a whole bunch. Sorry for showing this whole thing, guys, because I had to do things differently in order to share the sound. Okay. Well, we're back anyway. On March 21st, the Murfreesboro Daily Independent published its first full edition since the tornado. Rebuild Murfreesboro, the headline in tone. Unquenchable spirit of hometown victorious over embers of woe. Most of the towns would rebuild, but they would never again be quite the same. The 1925 tornado, as considering what would happen a few years later, obviously would be followed, a few years later by the Great Depression, stunning the growth of the region. Murfreesboro took a crippling blow when the railroads failed to rebuild. The burnt M&O yards was declared a total loss. Even the tracks were ripped out of the ground. 100 years later, to this day, Murfreesboro's population remains below the level of 1925. And this is obviously what Murfreesboro looks like today. But yeah, and you can kind of see it's somewhat of a sparse population. So yeah, it definitely remains below the level of 1925, which it obviously clearly shows, even after a century since this event occurred, it has still taken many of these towns quite a long time for them to truly recover. And some of them never did. Hey, Jenny, how are you? Good to see you here. But here's the thing. The deepest scar left by the tornado wasn't on the land. It was on the mind. Because here's the thing you have to realize. This is one of those classic examples of such disasters like this, is that there's always the belief if a tornado like the devastating one of 1925 could strike, it could strike again. And there was something foreordained about the path of that tornado. The first efforts of rebuilding were revealing. Interestingly, it wasn't new homes and buildings that people first. There was a word that's missing. It says it was storm. I meant to have it say it was storm shelters. There was a horror of the black clouds return. And that's the thing, too, is that everybody is always under the impression when it comes to devastating tornadoes that it was Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas that started the whole thing with the storm shelters and basements. Obviously, as you can clearly see, that while that may be true to some degree, that wasn't fully the case. It was, for the most part, southern Illinois and Indiana that really started it all. And like I said, there was a horror of the black clouds return, because it would be quite obvious that any type of cloud that was the least bit dark, or, a type of cloud where people couldn't get a really good look at it, was definitely a cause for great dread. It was wise to keep an eye on the clouds in the days ahead. The decades after the 1925 storm would see some of the worst outbreaks of tornadoes in history, including 2 record-breaking 148 and 360 tornadoes that touched down within a very few selective of days. The deadliest power ever to come from the sky was on its way, but this time, Tornado Alley would be ready. So, what we're going to now focus on, this is kind of almost the final part of the slideshow, chapter, if you will, which will focus basically on the evolution of different types of technology that was involving tornadoes and tornado forecasting. But just before I do, I'm going to just switch back to the studio real quick just to see if anybody's commented on it. Okay, so we're good so far. That's good. And yeah, let's continue. Oh, wait, hang on 1 second here. Why do they? Oh, great. All right, so here's the slideshow that I was trying to look for, but things, okay, so I must have accidentally put some of that same information in. Okay, so this was that painting that I was just referring to. So now everything's showing up. But yeah, this painting basically had referenced the tri-state tornado itself, even though this was in 1929 from Kansas. But interestingly, this is a little continuation of what was not on the previous slideshow. Curry's widow stated he had never witnessed a tornado in person, but he was likely familiar with accounts of tornadoes' destructive power. Now, but interestingly enough, there's more to it, though. This was a few years after the tri-state tornado, even though it references the tri-state one. Photographs of a June 2nd, 1929 F2 tornado passing through Hardner, Kansas, were among the first to clearly capture a tornado's shape, and the art curator, Henry Adams, proposed that they may also have served as visual guidance for Curry's tornado over Kansas. And it's hard to believe when you look at this that this photo is actually from 1929. It looks nothing more than just a modern day black and white picture, but nope, this is an actual picture from the 1920s with a tornado a few years after the tri-state one. Now, the funnel shape seen in one photograph closely resembles that of the painting's tornado. And another photograph of the tornado approaching a barn is believed to have inspired the painting's compositional layout. And you can kind of see that there is quite a similarity to the real tornado and the shape of the one in the painting, which I find really fascinating. Let's see. Okay. So now we jump ahead a few years. 1932, Cuba. This footage right here that I'm going to play, I don't think there's any sound here. No, there's not. So I can do this while the video is playing then. So this right here, this is the first tornado ever shot on motion picture film in Cuba.
Here is an amazing picture.
Okay, I guess there is sound to it. This is the first tornado ever shot on motion picture film in Cuba in October of 1932.
Here is an amazing picture, the actual forming of the tornado that destroyed Santa Cruz del Sur in Cuba. This unusual scene shows the deadly spiral whirling down to level off the peaceful countryside and tear up everything within its range. Look, it strikes, a finger of death pointing from the sky. Destruction as it travels across the country at 30 miles an hour southward to the Caribbean Sea. It's the first time this rare sight has ever been caught by a camera. And here's the tropical tornado, just a mass of ruins.
Now, interestingly, because as you can see, it was forming off the water first, it was also the first water spout ever captured on film, as it originally formed over the water before moving on to land. Willie, hear me cussing in the video. Yeah, right. Jumping forward now to even more, jumping forward to a few of the other outbreaks. April 5th to 6th, 1936. On April 5th to 6th, 1936, an outbreak of at least 14 tornadoes struck the southeastern United States, killing at least 454 people, with 419 of those deaths caused by just 2 tornadoes and injuring at least 2,500 others. Over 200 people died in Georgia alone, making it the deadliest disaster ever recorded in the state. And that is an actual picture of the aftermath in what was actually Gainesville, Georgia. Although the outbreak is often centered on the violent tornadoes in Tupelo, Mississippi, with an estimated F5 rating, and Gainesville, Georgia, estimated F4 rating, there were other destructive tornadoes in the cities of Columbia, Tennessee, Ackworth, Georgia, and Anderson, South Carolina. One long track F4 tornado killed 6 people in rural parts of Tennessee, and 2 other long track tornadoes, both rated EF3, killed an additional 13 people in southern Tennessee and northern Alabama. And another pair of F3 tornadoes touched down in Mississippi, claiming an additional 8 lives. This is the second deadliest tornado outbreak in U.S. history, ironically, after that of the tri-state tornado outbreak in 1925, and the only one in which 2 separate tornadoes killed more than 200 people each. And even, however, what's really fascinating about this outbreak, particularly the tornado that struck Tupelo, Mississippi, notably among the survivors were 1-year-old Elvis Presley and his parents. Yes, indeed, they were among the survivors. And that is once again, an actual photo featuring 1-year-old Elvis, long before his big fame. Long before, of course, he ever became the king. Okay, continuing forward, April 9th, 1947. Twisters killed by surprise. And through the 1940s, Tornado Alley was almost always taken by surprise. Now, from April 9th to 11th, 1947, a significant tornado outbreak produced catastrophic effects over portions of the southern Great Plains and the contiguous United States. The outbreak generated at least 12 and possibly 17 or more tornadoes, many of which were significant. And these are actual pictures detailing tornadoes from this outbreak. On Wednesday, April 9th, a series of related tornadoes spawned by a single supercell dubbed the Glacier, Higgins, and Woodward tornadoes swept. It's interesting. They swept through the states of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. Most of the damage, nearly all of the deaths, are still blamed on one large tornado, known as the Glacier, Higgins, Woodward tornado, same title, that traveled 98 miles from Texas to Oklahoma, beginning over the South Plains. This is kind of ironic because this event, up to nearly 2 miles in width, was often compared to the tri-state tornado because it was originally thought to have left a 198 to 221 mile long path, was similarly large and intense for much of its path, and was also retroactively rated F5 on the modern Fujita scale. But it is now believed to have been part of a 125 to 170 long family of 9 or 10 tornadoes, which, especially in this day and age, does make a lot more sense. Which we're going to explain a little bit more, like how was it truly possible that the tri-state tornado was either was a family or a single tornado. see, just going back. Oh, couldn't see him in the pic. You were coming. Okay, hold on 1 second. Sorry, guys. See, again, it's always here. We'll go back real quick and fix that up. Okay, that's not necessarily what I had in mind. See if we can, there we go. Okay, I believe this might work. Let's go back and see that picture of Elvis quickly then. There we go. Is that better, Jill? Give you guys just a few seconds. Okay. Yeah, sometimes I hate it when somehow I block part of the screen. And let's see. You're very welcome, Jill. Hang on 1 second here. I'm trying to just put myself back up. Okay, there we go. Here's what I was looking for. Okay. All right, so now continuing onwards from now going on to the next event, March 20th and 25th, 1948. So just the following year. There seemed no way to predict these tornadoes, and the only warning came with the roar of the wind and the sight of an unearthly cloud swirling with debris. That all changed in 1 week in 1948 with a remarkable double stroke of luck and inspiration. Here's the thing, at this point in time, when this event that I'm about to explain is that we needed an event to really help out with tornado forecasting. And these were the guys that really knew exactly what to do, like how does a tornado form right in front of their noses. Captain Robert Miller and Major Ernest J. Fawbush, Air Force weathermen with some untested notions about the origins of tornadoes. Two people in the right place at the right time. On March 20th, 1948, a tornado touched down the runway at Tinker Air Force Base near Oklahoma City. 50 large aircraft were destroyed. The total damage cost came to around $10 million or $131 million. $100 million in today's dollars. Surprisingly, nobody was injured or definitely nobody died. The March 20th tornado was the most damaging and costly tornado in Oklahoma history at the time. Now, while the base cleaned up the mess on the ground, Fawbush and Miller were looking at the sky. After a long week of intensive investigation and research came up with a forecast technique for tornadoes that still, believe it or not, and interestingly, still really holds water today, even almost 80 years later. Weather balloons, the day of the tornado, had spotted a distinctive atmospheric pattern. Both humid and dry air were associated with a low pressure area and a handful of other conditions. This may have been the fingerprints of tornado-producing clouds. Fawbush and Miller had their suspicions, but needed a chance to confirm them. As it happened, they didn't have long to wait. Just 5 days later, severe thunderstorms gathered over the runway. Meteorologists at the base noticed the extreme similarity between the weather conditions of that day and March 20th. The base commander wasn't about to lose any more aircraft to tornadoes. He ordered his meteorologists to consult their instruments and, if necessary, to issue a warning. The odds of 2 tornadoes hitting the same spot within the same week are astronomical. Yet, there in the thunderclouds was the same combination of humidity, dryness, and low pressure. Fawbush and Miller then took the forecasting gamble of the century. They issued the very first tornado warning. On the Air Force Base here's the thing too. I mean, from what I heard, is that this unique event of them having, issued the first tornado warning, if it had occurred, 50 miles north of the base or 50 miles south of the base, it probably would have been a very successful warning, much less on the base, obviously. On the Air Force Base is exactly where the second twister touched down. But this time, even though, as you guys can see in this photograph, that's still some of the aircraft was damaged, most of the aircraft was secured and there was little damage. The stunning success of Fawbush and Miller revolutionized meteorology. Due to lives and costs saved, Fawbush and Miller continued their tornado forecasts, which verified at quite a high rate over the next 3 years. At first, they kept their forecasts secret. In the spring and summer of 1949, they issued 18 forecasts for tornadoes within a 100 square mile area, and all 18 proved successful. Now, it's interesting because let's not forget, in the subsequent years, while not explicitly using the word tornado, the Weather Bureau used the pair's forecast to predict severe local storms. And that's interesting because, like I said, truly prior to 1953, this was still at a time when, as I mentioned a couple weeks back, the words hurricane or tornado were not allowed. It was forbidden it was completely forbidden because they didn't want to cause the public to panic, obviously. So, anyways, the synoptic pattern, which occurred on March 25th, later became known as the Miller Type B pattern and is recognized as one of the most potent severe weather setups. In a few short years, their severe weather forecasting techniques were accepted nationwide. They would soon make the difference between life and death in Tornado Alley. So, now this you guys are going to like. Here we go. This one, I know this is another video I have here. This has no sound, so I can do this once again. So before I get started, let me tell you the date, obviously. June 8th, 1951. Now, I know I just mentioned before about this tornado footage that I just showed that was from Cuba in October of 1932. That was, like I said, the first ever footage of a tornado captured on film. Well, that was for the first one ever in the entire world. What you are about to see, as it's about to say here, let me play this while I get this up. This tornado, let's give it a few seconds. This tornado that was filmed in Corn, Oklahoma on June 8th, 1951 is the first tornado footage filmed here in the United States. And it's quite remarkable. What's really fascinating about this footage is obviously it says it is rather unique due to the tornado rotating clockwise, which are known as anticyclonic tornadoes, which are very rare. And even though this is from 1951, you could see the speed of the rotation. But that is actual footage of the tornado that hit Corn, Oklahoma. This tornado would go on to destroy about 25 homes. Let the footage play out. Yep, there's some of the damage left by the tornado. It had to have been at least an F2 or F3 at least. Oh, look at that car being ripped up. Yeah, it did quite the amount of destruction on this one. Okay, let me just go back for a sec. Just checking on the comments over here. think that was... Okay, never mind. Oh, here we go, because something was missing. Yeah, it's my pleasure, Jill. Okay. Now, surprisingly, despite the amount of destruction, there were no injuries or deaths involving this tornado. Next up, this is going to be a little bit hard to see on your screen, but I can see it perfectly on my side. And we're not just talking about a specific date. We're talking about almost the entire year in general. 1953. 1953 would also prove to be one of the worst years on record for killer tornadoes. And unfortunately, the first full year of tornado forecasting. The U.S. Weather Bureau began issuing tornado watches in 1952. Despite not many tornadoes being documented, 1953 was an extremely deadly season and set the record for most tornadoes recorded in the U.S. in a single year at the time. The first 6 months of the year generated several large outbreaks and outbreak sequences that killed over 400 people. Now, this footage right here is I'm going to describe here in just a sec. It has some sound. Hopefully it doesn't have any effect. This tornado, filmed on April 30th at Warner Robins, Georgia, killed 19 people. Actually, I'll play it again. Yeah, so anyways, this tornado, filmed on April 30th at Warner Robins, Georgia, killed 19 people, including, it's rumored, the person who shot this film. I'll play it again one more time since it's a real short clip. And no, that's not actual sound from the footage itself. That was just added in, obviously. This was a devastating F4 tornado that struck that again Warner Robins Air. That was actually more of Warner Robins Air Force Base in Georgia. And yeah, there's still a rumor that goes around that the cameraman was actually killed himself while filming this. Although there's no direct hard evidence to prove it, but that's been going on obviously for over 70 years. See what we got next. Okay, so now activity abruptly slowed after that before another outbreak sequence in early December killed 49. Many of the fatalities were caused by the unusually large number of violent tornadoes that were recorded that year. This included 5 F5 tornadoes. Hello, Aunt Barb. Thanks for tuning in. The first F5 tornadoes recorded in the U.S. tornado database created in 1950. Now, in all, there were 523 tornado-related fatalities in the U.S. alone in 1953, the most since 1925. This was actually, and it's hard to believe that, in some way that this would be surpassed by a year that I would be around this case, but this high a death toll would not be repeated until 2011, 15 years ago. And you have to think to yourself, too, in 1953, you had more people dying more than ever. And this was the same year. You had more people dying in the same year when the first tornado forecasts were not only proven to be successful, but really actually had set quite an effect on everybody. It's just really hard to believe that. There were 5,131 injuries recorded throughout the year as well. 1953 is also the only year since 1950 to have 3 tornadoes kill over 90 people and to have 2 tornadoes kill over 110. On a positive note, however, major changes were made to improve both the warning and radar systems. The changes continued down to a 10-mile wide vortex that produced the first recognized tornadic hook echo on April 9th of that year in 1953. And this is also footage too. And that tornado that actually occurred in Charleston, Illinois. That is an actual picture of that tornado. But here is the radar. It's just a few seconds. Yep, and you can clearly see the hook echo being detected, which normally a lot of these radars weren't able to detect. So this was quite a rare moment to have an actual tornado being detected on radar. But yeah, it continued down to a 10-mile wide vortex that produced the first recognized tornadic hook echo in 1953. Okay, continuing onwards. June 27th, 1955. In the afternoon hours of June 27th, 1955, a violent and well-documented multiple vortex F4 tornado moved through the communities of Henry, Morrill, Scotts Bluff especially, and Minnetonka, all located in the state of Nebraska. The tornado, known informally by the National Weather Service as the Scotts Bluff, Nebraska tornado, was the most well-documented tornado in history at the time of the event. Interestingly, what's more fascinating is the tornado was one of the first multi-vortex tornadoes to be captured on film and in photographs. Over 80 photographs were taken of the tornado along its 40-mile path. And I have footage of it as well. This footage, as you can see, is commonly believed to be the first color footage of a tornado. I'll play it again because it's pretty short. I had to take this from a documentary. They didn't have an actual video showing the full footage. So, but yeah, this I think is the first color footage of a tornado right here. And it's hard to believe, 1955. I'll play it one more time. Okay. Just go back real quick. Just check on the comments. We're good so far. Okay. Now, here's something that's going to sound, as we've kind of already learned through all these different types of tornadic events that have occurred the decades after the 1925 tri-state tornado. At one point during the late 1950s, it seemed as though history did somewhat repeat itself. In other words, in that part of southern Illinois and Indiana, we're going to focus now on a particular event that happened on December 18th, 1957. Over 30 years after the tri-state tornado, this particular storm was probably the closest tornadic event in which history somewhat repeated itself, again for southern Missouri and Illinois. On December 18th and 20th, 1957, a significant tornado outbreak sequence affected the southern Midwest and the south of the contiguous United States. The outbreak sequence began on the afternoon of December 18th, when a low-pressure area approached the southern portions of Missouri and Illinois. Supercells developed and proceeded eastward at horizontal speeds of 40 to 45 miles per hour, yielding what was considered the most severe tornado outbreak in Illinois on record so late in the calendar year, which I can see why, considering especially that this happened just a few days before Christmas. One of the most notorious, which was also the deadliest of the outbreak sequence, interestingly closely resembled the 1925 tri-state tornado and affected some of the same areas that were hit in 1925, including locations in and near Gorham, Sandridge, Murfreesboro, DeSoto, and Bush. It may have touched down in eastern Missouri, but was first observed at 4:45 p.m. Some sources say 4:30 p.m. in Gorham, destroying or damaging 40 homes there. Now, surprisingly, only one fatality occurred in nearby Sandridge. As it neared and passed through the southeast side of Murfreesboro, the tornado paralleled the Big Muddy River, moving east-northeast. It produced the worst damage, which was rated F4 on the Fujita scale in this area, destroying old buildings. However, the most intense damage only affected a small section of southeast Murfreesboro, where 10 of the 11 deaths occurred. Now, afterward, the tornado continued on to damage parts of DeSoto, Hearst, and Bush. The tornado was last reported near Plumfield at 5:05 p.m. Murfreesboro was powerless for almost 3 days, as most utilities were in the worst hit areas. The tornado injured 200 people along its path. Obviously, I think we could see a total difference in the number of deaths compared to the one that occurred 100 years ago. You had almost 700 people that were killed by the tri-state tornado of 1925. But with this one that occurred in 1957, only 11 people throughout the entire path were killed in this one. So a complete, what's the word I'm thinking of? Basically a complete, drop compared to what happened in 1925. So I got a few more videos I'm going to show quickly. May 4th, 1961. Now, this footage I think you guys are going to find very fascinating. Just real quick. We got a few other comments coming up. Oh, hey, Kelly. Good to see you. Government control. Hey, Tom. The summer's supposed to be bad. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. I'm sure it's going to be intense. Anyways, this footage, if you guys can see, I know it's a little small, but I tried to enlarge it as much as I could. This is very fascinating what you're about to see. This is from May 4th, 1961. And as I'm playing this is the first film ever taken of a tornado on an actual tornado chase in Geary, Oklahoma on May 4th, 1961. Neil Ward, one of the true pioneers, as you can see that little piece of footage right there, he was one of the true pioneers of severe storm research, was guided to it by Oklahoma City radar. And there he is, obviously, right there. The position of I'm going to play just a little bit. I'm going to just repeat it a little bit because I want to have it kind of narrated while this is playing. The position of a supercell with a weak echo region was relayed from Oklahoma City to a state highway patrol car that accompanied Neil. Always ahead of his time, Neil Ward was the father of scientific storm chasing and the man who refined the multiple vortex tornado model. He also experimented with ideas such as how the outflow from one storm can enhance tornado formation in a nearby storm. In a great irony, he passed away in 1972 at the age of 57, just days before the first organized storm chase would take to the road. That same day, footage of another tornado was also taken in the nearby town of Cheyenne, Oklahoma, which I also have footage of. So this is a little longer piece of footage, about 2 minutes, but it's really quite fascinating footage. It's even hard for me to even believe that this was shot in 1961 because the camera quality makes it look more like it was shot even earlier. But I just decided to throw this in because I thought it was really fascinating. And this was also, I think, one of the first tornadoes captured on film that actually features, as you will see in just a few seconds, featuring a satellite tornado where you have the smaller tornadoes. Yep, there it is. It usually involves a smaller tornado rotating around the main funnel. Hence the name, a satellite tornado. It's quite remarkable. Now, I don't know if this is done by the same camera operator, but looks like this time it's now being shot in somebody's house. I sometimes can't help also but wonder what it would have sounded like. Now, this tornado, from what I heard, I mean, as you can see, it mainly crossed through rural areas. As you can see, it does look like it's kind of out in a field, even though it's near a residential area. But this tornado surprisingly did little damage. And you're going to see in just a second, I think another satellite tornado is about to form right next to the main fault. Yep, there it is. There's the funnel of the satellite. Look at that. Incredible. Especially for 1961. Okay, let me just see what else is. Oh, hello, Allison from Connecticut. Good to see it. Yeah, indeed. It is it is powerful stuff. Absolutely. Okay, moving forward. Oh, no. Yeah, there we go. I forgot I had it right there. Yeah, this is commonly regarded as the first tornado footage featuring a satellite vortex. Now, just the following year, June 5th, 1962, which once again I have footage of this. This also marked the debut of something else important. Hello, Nikki. Good to see you. Check this out. This is also in black and white. The first tornado ever captured. Excuse me. Let me take that. Let me try that again because I like to again narrate this while this is playing. The first tornado ever photographed from an airplane was caught on movie film during Project Rough Rider in Follett, Texas, on June 5th, 1962. Pretty fascinating. Oh, I forgot to fade in. Got another video here. So now we fast forward 2 years later, April 3rd, 1964. On the evening hours of April 3rd, 1964, a violent tornado struck the city of Wichita Falls, Texas. Located in northern Texas. The tornado, estimated to be an F5 on the Fujita scale, killed 7 and injured a further 111, and causing an estimated $15 million in damages. The tornado heavily damaged downtown Wichita Falls and destroyed much of Sheppard Air Force Base. The tornado, as you're about to see in this footage, this is just, again, another piece of history right here. This was the first tornado that was broadcast to the public via live cameras and is the highest rated tornado to ever hit Wichita Falls. Oops. And I forgot to add this. Not only was it the first to be broadcast to the public live, as far as any of us know, this, I think, is also the first ever tornado footage ever filmed with live sound. So just real quick, just because it's going to last for a few minutes, just want to go to the comments real quick. Kelly just said something. Government are still doing this. Go down the rabbit hole. Don't kid yourself if you think they are not involved. Yeah, I think so too. Anyways, now you've seen all these other pieces of footage I just showed you guys. They didn't have any sound at all. Allow me now to present you guys the first ever tornado footage with live sound.
Jokingly known as Tornado Alley, Wichita Falls. Let's take a look now at these clouds as they are forming in the distance. This is looking toward the west-northwest of the Channel 6 studios. You can see a great deal of turbulence in these clouds. They're dipping, falling and rising once again. There's also at the bottom of the screen, or just above the ground, quite a lot of smoke pall. I don't know what that's from. All in all, it looks now as though we might just have rather severe conditions on our hands. Now, as we have advised you on Channel 6 News, as well as Weather in Motion, there is a severe thunderstorm forecast out for the immediate Wichita Falls area and most of the Channel 6 viewing area. The severe weather forecast is in effect and will remain in effect until 8 o'clock tonight. These clouds continue to swirl about us, sometimes dipping, sometimes rising. The winds have picked up considerably in the last few minutes, and we'll keep you posted as things do develop as we get further information from the United States Weather Bureau. Now again, I'll repeat a bulletin received just moments ago from the Weather Bureau. That bulletin reads as follows: a tornado has been reported developing in the area of the Seymour Road and Highway 269. The funnel cloud, or the extreme turbulence, is moving eastward. All interests in that area of the Seymour Road and Highway 269 have been alerted, or should now be alerted, to seek safety.
I'm just going to pause this just for a quick sec. Hopefully I'm not echoing. This footage, as you can see here too, yes, this was 1964. The footage is in black and white, but they're actually using a combination, because some people are like wondering, is this supposed to be like video footage of some sort? It's actually a combination of kind of like high def, well, like kind of an early version of high def, and also using, I think, their 16 millimeter footage film in some degree. But the one thing I can't help but notice, that when they were probably filming this, boy, whoever filmed this must have had a time filming this tornado, because you have to think, cameras back in the 60s were like giant boxes. They were huge and heavy. So I can't help but think how the cameraman is able to hold this stuff, hold this camera up, without stressing his arms. Although they did have tripods, obviously. So I assume most likely it's probably just on a tripod, but still, those cameras back then were huge and heavy. And not to mention, for a fact that it is Texas, based on the news reporter's accent. That's definitely Texas accent right there.
Should now be alerted to seek safety. We're scanning the skies now with the Channel 6 camera from the rear of our Channel 6 studio location. D. Fletcher, what do you have there?
Just a repeat of this. A tornado reported developing in the area of the Seymour Road and Highway 369. That is a correction. All persons in the Wichita Falls area and Burke-Burnett should take immediate safety precautions. We had a report from the Channel 6 radar unit that there is quite a lot of turbulence under this smoky condition over there, and that he said it was quite unreal, the turbulence there with the strong winds and so on.
Today we noticed just a moment ago on our own Channel 6 weather radar, there's a very dark area just to the north of Wichita Falls, which would indicate severe turbulence, quite possibly a very heavy deposit of moisture, and that could be in the form of rain, maybe even hail. Down near the horizon now, John, this should be to the right of your screen. You'll see some more dust or smoke being picked up. From here it appears to be along the river bottoms of the Wichita River. That would be across the Seymour Highway and over in the Wichita River bottom vicinity. So there's a great deal of turbulence right within this area. Dee, this is at this time a little reminiscent of a situation we had here, I believe, back in the summer of, was it 1959, when Channel 6 made a television first by putting on the air live a tornado. Now, we haven't seen one today. Let's hope that we don't, although we do have this report from the Weather Bureau that a tornado funnel has been spotted developing. So far, we don't have one to show you today. And as I say, I hope we won't. We might repeat that bulletin again.
Right there.
Just to say that this is developing at Highway 369, moving eastward, and all interest in that area should, of course, take safety precautions.
This was the picture presented on radar at the television station. The radar scanning on the 20-mile scale confirmed the take cover warning issued by the Weather Bureau. The large area of black surrounded by a ring of white meant destruction.
here's the hook echo, as you can see. So again, a rare case where the hook echo was detected.
As the twister made its motions of leaping and diving, dipping and weaving, this clear-cut path of destruction was being mowed through Sunset Terrace and Lincoln Heights, two highly populated residential areas of Wichita Falls, Texas. As the twister moved into Lincoln Heights, we changed our live camera position, and the first inkling of what we were seeing began to dawn on even the hardest newsman, well used to seeing violence and destruction.
Here's
Now we have a picture of it once again, Jack. About the only thing I can say at the moment is that the funnel appears to be moving away from Wichita Falls proper, but is now, at the moment, apparently very close to Sheppard Air Force Base. We have quite a lot of confusion out in this area, not only at the station with people wondering what's going to happen, but a good many cars stopped along the Seymour Highway where, from their vantage point, this tornado funnel, and it's definitely that, stands out quite well. We have only remnants of reports of damage so far. Jack Britton tells me that Larry Whirl, a Channel 6 newsman, is out in a news unit right now. He has reported in that there was damage to a house on the Iowa Park Road. We don't know the extent of that damage at this time. You can see for yourself the funnel. This is a large one, Jack. As a rule, the funnels I've seen in the past have been very narrow, and they just almost like a string hang down toward the earth. This is quite large. I would say, hazarding a guess, that this is covering a very large area of ground. Now, thank you, Dee. We just have another weather bulletin. I repeat it for...
It's going to pause it for a sec. I don't know if you guys can see it as clearly as I can, but you can clearly see this tornado is definitely growing and kind of pointing it out exactly because, again, the footage is in black and white. You can see how much larger it's gotten, and not necessarily a wedge, but it's a huge, in this case, a huge stovepipe. And right there on the bottom is all this dust and debris that it's picking up. So that's a monster tornado right there. And it did event, and although it looks like it's out in a general open area, this tornado would later go on to destroy about 500 homes. And like I said, it killed 7 people, sadly. And there is some other pieces of footage of this tornado that were captured, which was more on movie film, but understandably, unlike this piece of footage, the other pieces of footage out there is silent.
The tornado has moved just west of the airport, so it is definitely in the Sheppard area. It is moving between northeast and east, moving toward the Sheppard Air Force Base area. So you folks out there, please be alerted. Please be alerted. This tornado funnel is moving into the Sheppard Air Force Base area or moving in that direction. It is not near Wichita Falls proper. It is moving into the Sheppard Air Force Base area. The tornado, according to this WeatherWire bulletin, has been located just west of the airport, very close to the Weather Bureau offices.
Ted, at one time I noticed that this tornado apparently changed directions 2 or 3 times when it was first born and spawned over in the southwest. At one time it appeared to be coming directly toward Wichita Falls, the Channel 6 tower. Then it moved off to the northwest, and now has turned around and has started back toward Sheppard Air Force Base.
Just a moment. We understand that one of the radio station's towers have been knocked down. One of the radio station towers here in town have been knocked down by the force of this thing. We still, of course, don't have any reports of extent of damage. We hope there have been no injuries. I will, however, repeat this very urgent bulletin just received from the Weather Bureau. That is that this funnel, which you can now see on your screens, is just west of the airport. It is moving between northeast and easterly in direction and moving towards the Sheppard Air Force Base area. You folks out at Sheppard, please take all necessary precautions. Advise your friends and immediate neighbors that there is an impending problem here with this tornado funnel, which is still very visible from this location. And Jack, I see a tremendous pall of dust in the area of Sheppard Air Force Base.
This is much larger than the pall that accompanied the 1958 tornadoes, Ted. And also, may I add, and I wasn't here at the moment, you may have already had this on, I understand that KNIN radio towers have been taken down.
All of the radio stations are off, according to the most recent report we have here. Well, I see one set of...
Yeah, look how much dust now. It's really picking up.
Tower still standing. So
that would be KWFTs.
Yes, I understand that at least one of the station's towers have been knocked down. And
Larry Whirl reports that KNIN's towers on the Seymour, or rather on the Iowa Park Road, were knocked down.
At this point, the tornado is entering the Sheppard Air Force Base area. The white arrow points out on radar the hook or black finger which is characteristic of a tornado-bearing thunderstorm cell.
From where this tornado started and from where it is right now, you'd find that it's almost a northeasterly course.
And Jack, now that the lighting has for some reason or other changed, probably because the sun has come out, you can see the tremendous plume of dirty brown dust and debris rising above that area around the funnel itself, or the remnants of the funnel, and we can't determine which at that time. Jack, I think we've done just about all we can to this point to describe exactly what has happened. Reports of damage, injuries, if there have been any, and I hope not, have not as yet come in. Certainly we don't have any sort of a complete report to give you. Now we have another appearance of a funnel.
Yes.
Can you swing around and get that, please? A white rope effect. Very definitely that funnel is still with us, which is right above and possibly just beyond Sheppard Air Force Base. That is still a funnel, Jack, and a big one.
This is more of the picture tornado that you see in your mind's eye when you hear the word tornado. Nothing like we've been watching for the last 30 minutes, Ted, but this...
No, at
this
first
is
the
an
column, the actual tornado column was very wide. It was rather ill-defined because of clouds and smoke. Within the confines of the funnel itself, we have a great pressure of precipitation, probably hail, certainly very strong rains, a lot of very, very well-packed precipitation right in the small area. That's giving you the black return just to the northeast of Wichita Falls, probably more in a northerly direction on our weather radar screen. Yes, Jack?
Larry Worrell has just reported in to us that there has been heavy damage in Sunset Terrace.
Okay, for some reason, I guess part of the footage got cut off, but right before that footage was coming to an end, the news anchor right there, he actually says, "Oh, good Lord," which, of course, can't really say things like that on the news in this day and age. And I just looked up exactly what type of footage this was. It says the Wichita Falls tornado in 1964 was filmed by TV station KAUZ using kinescope, live TV signal, direct to film, which makes sense of why it had that camera look, video camera look. It was, and film look at the same time. It was turned out it was the halfway point between film and videotape. And let's see what else I could find about it. Let's see. Yeah, that's basically what it was. It was using kinescope in this case. Anyways, I'm going to see what everyone's saying in the comments quickly. There's spirits together in a circle. That's interesting. The American flag. Yeah. And then let's see here. Anything else? I see spirits in the tornado and the lamp. Well, like I said, this tornado killed at least 7 people. But moving on to the next event. So this was about a year later, and ironically, they just had the 60th anniversary of this. I'm probably going to eventually cover this in a separate future slideshow. Just the following year, April 10th to 12th, 1965, which became known as the Palm Sunday outbreak. The 1965 Palm Sunday tornado outbreak was a historic severe weather event that affected the Midwestern and Southeastern United States on April 10th to 12th, 1965. The tornado outbreak produced 55 confirmed tornadoes in one day and 16 hours, as evidenced by these photographs. These are different tornadoes from this outbreak. The worst part of the outbreak occurred during the afternoon hours of April 11th into the overnight hours going into April 12th. The second largest tornado outbreak on record at the time. This deadly series of tornadoes inflicted a swath of destruction from Cedar County, Iowa to Cuyahoga County, Ohio, and a swath 450 miles long from Kent County, Michigan to Montgomery County, Indiana. The main part of the outbreak lasted 16 hours and 35 minutes and is among the most intense outbreaks in terms of tornado strength ever recorded, including at least 4 double twin funnel tornadoes, which this picture, as you can see right here, would later become a very famous and notorious image. And it's still, frankly, used in a lot of tornado research and also in a lot of documentaries. I can't remember exactly where, but I know this was photographed in Indiana. And there was actually a famous YouTuber who discovered the exact location of where this photograph was recently taken. He had used Google Maps for it, and he was able to find what is believed to be that exact same road. And from what I remember hearing, as you can see, most of what you see in this picture is no longer there today. The only things that are still there, according to what he found, was it's probably not the original ones. Obviously, the power lines are still there, which, of course, again, I'm sure they've been replaced. And you can't really see it too well, but there's actually a railroad line that runs. And, of course, the road itself. But everything else, though, I think is, has since been either demolished or, just been torn down. Anyways, in all, the outbreak killed 266 people, injured 3,662 others, and caused $1,217 billion in damage, as you can see from these pictures. Now, in 2023, tornado expert Thomas P. Grzillas created the Outbreak Intensity Score, or OIS, as a way to rank various tornado outbreaks. The 1965 Palm Sunday tornado outbreak received an OIS of 238, making it the fourth worst tornado outbreak in recorded history. Now, but here's the thing that should be noted. But the 1965 outbreak was nothing like what happened just 9 years later, which we'll get to that in just a short while. It was an outbreak of tornadoes 3 times the size of the Palm Sunday outbreak. But before we get to that, I'm just going to throw these out. 2 other events that occurred before with what we're about to talk about. 1971. In 1971, the Fujita scale was invented by Ted Fujita of the University of Chicago in collaboration with Alan Pearson, head of the National Severe Storms Forecast Center, currently the Storm Prediction Center. The scale was updated in 1973, taking into account path length and width. In the United States, starting in the late 1970s, tornadoes were rated soon after occurrence. The Fujita scale was applied retroactively to tornadoes reported between 1950 and the adoption of the scale in the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, obviously, National Tornado Database. Fujita rated tornadoes from 1916 to 1992, and Tom Grzillas of the Tornado Project retroactively rated all known significant tornadoes. F2 to F5 are causing a fatality in the U.S. as far back as 1880. Fujita rate. Let's see here. The Fujita scale was adopted in most areas outside of the United Kingdom. That year, because 1971 was quite a unique year for certain types of weather inventions. That same year, the Saffir-Simpson scale, a tropical cyclone intensity scale that classifies hurricanes, which in the Western Hemisphere are tropical cyclones that exceed the intensities of tropical depressions and tropical storms, was also invented. That scale was developed by civil engineer Herbert Saffir and meteorologist Robert Simpson, who at the time was director of the U.S. National Hurricane Center. In 1973, the scale was introduced to the general public and saw widespread use after Neil Frank replaced Simpson at the helm of the NHC in 1974. Then going on, I got another piece of footage right here. June 18th, 1972. On June 18th, 1972, Hurricane Agnes was close to making landfall near Panama City, Florida. Later, after it made landfall, Agnes caused a significant tornado outbreak with at least 26 confirmed twisters, 2 of which were spawned in Georgia. The tornadoes and 2 initially unconfirmed tornadoes in Florida alone resulted in $4.5 million in damage and 6 fatalities. Now, what's even more fascinating is one of those tornadoes would be captured on film, as you can see right here. Now, this is the first ever hurricane-spawned tornado to be captured on film. near the Florida Everglades and was one of several tornadoes that developed over Florida as rain bands from Hurricane Agnes moved across the southern peninsula while the storm was moving northward through the Gulf of Mexico. And this was captured, in fact, by a very well-known storm chaser named Jim Leonard. Sadly, he passed away several years ago. I believe he passed away in a few years. Well, it says 2007. I know it was a few years after he originally uploaded it, but sadly, he's passed. But this is, again, it's another compelling piece of footage, showing a tornado during a hurricane being in progress. Hey, what's up, Scott? Okay, so now we get to. Oh, I'm sorry. There was one more event before we get to this other outbreak I was going to mention. So, following year, May 25th, 1973. On May 25th, 1973, a violent tornado touched down several miles west-northwest of Union City, Oklahoma, and moved east-southeastward through the city before it turned and traveled more southeastward for several miles. This tornado was rated an F4, lasting roughly for a half hour, and at one point had a 500-yard wide damage path. Estimated damages total $1 million in Union City, and the tornado destroyed 27 homes and 18 mobile homes. In addition, 20 homes sustained major damage, and 23 homes had minor damage. Several commercial buildings and churches were also heavily damaged. Farm animals were killed and crops damaged. 2 people were killed while 4 others were injured, with 2 being seriously injured. It was noted that the intensity and destruction of this tornado was immense. There were also 2 funnels reported in the area at the time of the event. And what's really fascinating is that this was one of the most thoroughly studied tornadoes in history, as multiple scientists from the National Severe Storms Laboratory documented the event through experimental Doppler radar and storm chase teams. It was also the first successful scientific tornado chase, and that too I have footage of. Now I'm not going to play this entire footage because it's about a good 16 minutes. So I'm just going to play for just maybe the first 5 minutes of it. This is on YouTube, so you can watch it there later. I would watch the entire thing, but again, it's just too long, and I'm really trying to get to finishing up the slideshow. But you can see right here, here is the supercell thunderstorm that would eventually spawn the Union City tornado. What you can see right there, the dark background in the background is all rain. And I think we're about to see is, yep, there it is. That's the wall cloud that's going to create the tornado in just a few minutes. Oh, look at that. Lightning just striking right below that wall cloud. Yep, okay, there it is. And this tornado was almost surrounded by, these portable Doppler radars that were being created. Now, you have to remember, even though they had Doppler radar, to study with the Union City tornado, unfortunately, this was still at a time where many other news stations and weather stations still had to rely on the older fashioned radar systems they had in that era. And what's even more fascinating about this tornado in general wasn't necessarily the very first tornado to have ever been filmed this way, but it was one of the first where it captured almost the entire life cycle of a tornado. So what you just saw just a few seconds ago was what's known as the developing stage. Now it's about to enter the main stage, which is often referred to as the mature stage. That's basically a classic. That's kind of like a classic cone shape right there. Hey, Jacqueline. Hello, Josh. Allison says I have screenshots. R.I.P. Brave man. I don't know if you're referring to the camera operator. I don't know if he's still alive or not. I really don't. Okay, so that's one part of the segment. Let's see, yeah, we'll play just for another 3 minutes. Okay, that flash probably most likely was lightning. And now it's now it's fully in its mature stage. And even after that, after I showed the Wichita Falls footage, for many years, that became the only type of tornado footage that had live sound. Many of the other tornadoes that would be captured on film, such as this one here in Union City, Oklahoma, were filmed, but obviously were silent because, 16 and 35 millimeter cameras didn't really have sound quality, or at least not these cameras did. I'm going to eventually fast forward just a little bit because I am going to show this is another important piece of this footage. I'll play after one final minute, and it goes to show what eventually is its final stage that it eventually transforms into, which is near the end, basically the end life cycle of a tornado. Excuse me. I like how, unlike the pictures too, it has kind of like this ghostly white. It has like this ghostly white color to it. Seeing how white it is, contrast to the background itself. Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward this now. I'm just gonna show basically. See what we got. Okay, there's time lapse footage. There's National Severe Storms Laboratory. Oh, this right here is actually another classic piece right here of the tornado. I'll play that for just a few seconds because now you can see clearer quality of the tornado itself. Don't worry, the camera. Yep, there we go. The camera operator was gonna move to focus on it. Yep, and they even get a close-up shot of it. I don't know what it is, but just seeing the shape of it just looks so perfect. Almost like it kind of looks almost like a cutout of some way. It's just so perfect, and even to some varying degree, it's even not only just eerie to look at, it's even quite beautiful at the same time, despite the fact that this tornado was still a killer. Because, like I said, at least 2 people were killed from this tornado. And there was one other thing here too. This was an ideal combination within the radar range of NSSL, with 2 cameras in position filming simultaneously. As you can see right here too, this footage is starting to resemble kind of the photograph that you see right here. Anyways, I'm gonna. Oh, you know what? Since it's almost done, I'll let this finish up then. Yeah, I thought I had the other piece of footage. I guess I didn't, but it was to show the tornado roping out, which usually was referred to as the shrinking stage, and eventually usually what's then referred to as the dissipating stage. I don't have that footage, but this photograph demonstrates when it was shrinking down as the tornado was dying. How incredible. Looks like it's not even moving. It even appears that it's not even moving very fast. I mean, based on the speed it's putting on right now, I mean, it's moving right now. It's got to be at least moving. I mean, it does look slow, but in reality, it's probably actually moving about at least 20 to 25 miles an hour. So it's still moving quite at a rate. It looks like that's probably been shot over probably about, I would say, maybe a mile and a half away, maybe even a mile. Look at that distinct wall cloud that they're filming. I'm glad they're filming part of the wall cloud. That's obviously the cloud right there that produced the tornado to begin with. So look at the rotation involved. That's just like, again, that's really cool to look at, especially from a 1970s standpoint. How incredible. Okay, let's check on the comments real quick. Hey, what's up, Josh? Had a bad one downtown last year. It partially destroyed my bank and blew off the AC of the roof. Then 2 back-to-back hurricanes. Yeah, oh man, can't even. I can't even imagine. The Storm Chaser. I'm not sure, Allison, which one you're referring to, but I think I got an idea. Okay, so I was talking about, a few minutes ago about the Palm Sunday outbreak. That was nothing compared to an outbreak. Now, what I'm about to present, I'm only going to talk just a little bit about this. It's kind of more of a recap, if anything, because this was actually an outbreak that I had previously covered last year, ironically, for the 50th anniversary, and that happened to be no other than, in this case, the super outbreak, April 3rd to 4th, 1974. The 1974 super outbreak was the largest tornado outbreak on record for a single 24-hour period, just behind the 2011 super outbreak with 223 tornadoes in one day. It was one of the deadliest outbreaks in U.S. history. It was also the most violent tornado outbreak ever recorded, with 30 violent F4 or F5 rated tornadoes confirmed. From April 3rd to 4th, there were 148 tornadoes confirmed in 13 U.S. states and the Canadian province of Ontario. In the United States, the tornado struck Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Virginia, West Virginia, and New York. Wave after wave of deadly tornadoes. Tanner, Alabama, in the track of a 51-mile-long twister that decimated a trailer park. Hello, Irene? Yeah, it decimated a trailer park and filled the hospitals with wounded. This is kind of a chilling account I'm about to tell you. One injured man was taken to a church for his safety to await arrival at the hospital, only to be overtaken by a second tornado a half hour later that caused the roof to collapse, which killed him. 2 people were killed in Louisville, Kentucky, when a twister sideswiped the city, but a nearby suburb called Brandenburg was hit even harder. Brandenburg was all but wiped out. 31 people lost their lives. At one point in Indiana, as many as 16 separate tornadoes were occurring on the ground simultaneously. The National Weather Service gave up a county-by-county alert. Instead, they issued an unprecedented blanket tornado warning. The whole state of Indiana was advised to take cover, even in areas not affected by the outbreak, which to this day remains the first and only time an entire state was ever put under a tornado warning. And a lot of the things that occurred involving the super outbreak, the 74 super outbreak was quite unique. Just all the elements and traces as well as the combinations for this outbreak were there just at the right time. Now, perhaps the most notorious tornado of them all, as I'm going to show this footage. I've shown it previously in a last slideshow, but right here in Xenia, Ohio, a high school student shot this film while 3 funnel clouds converged on the town. Now, this one does have sound. This was not actually filmed from the camera itself, but was filmed, as it says, by a separate source as the tornado intensified and recorded. Eventually, this footage along with the audio were combined into one. There you go. There you have the destruction that was left by it. And as this is filming, this was the deadliest single tornado out of almost 150. Xenia had some of the most appalling damage of the outbreak, as well as some of the worst loss of life, and many of the now familiar freaks of tornado force winds. 34 people were killed here. 34 people were killed there, but many others were saved by early warnings. The sirens caused the high school drama team to cut their rehearsals short. Seconds later, 2 school buses landed on the stage where they had been practicing. And that is the high school right there. The outbreak caused roughly $600 million, equivalent to $3.83 billion in today's dollars. The outbreak extensively damaged approximately 900 square miles along a total combined path length of 2,600 miles. It took weeks to assess the damage and document the touchdowns. Only then did scientists realize the enormity of what had occurred. An unprecedented 148 separate tornadoes, a record number of F4 and F5 tornadoes, record miles of tornado destruction. The death toll was 315, which significantly wasn't near a record, less than half the number of the tri-state tornado of 1925. Perhaps science had finally put the brakes on runaway death tolls from tornadoes, which you have to admit, heaven knows how many people would have died had these super outbreak occurred 100 years ago. Death toll would have been even far higher than what it originally was. It probably would have been 2,000, maybe 3,000, or even 5,000 deaths, or even worse, heaven forbid, too, maybe even 10,000 deaths. Not unlikely at all. And also, people basically during, in Xenia, as well as all those that were, affected by the outbreak in general, obviously they obviously were almost completely prepared in some way, shape, or form compared to what happened 100 years ago. These people managed to get some type of training out of this, especially, those who grew up, went to school, and learned this stuff, and also learned from family members. When this occurred 50 years ago with the outbreak, people knew what to do. They were outside. They were looking at the sky. 100 years ago, the chances of a tornado, especially hitting a downtown area, would have never even came to anyone's mind at that time. So that was quite unique. And that's it. Just goes to show the evolution. There was something else I was going to say involving it. And actually one more thing, and I just recently discovered this. I might actually add this to the slide to the super outbreak slideshow on a later time. But there wasn't always, obviously the tornado outbreak was the main focus, but I did recently learn there were other types of weather, non-tornadic related events that occurred during the 2-day outbreak. In addition, you also had severe storms and winter storms that, in addition to the 13 states and one Canadian province, you also had winter storms and severe storms also affecting parts of Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and South Carolina, and as far north as Quebec. Okay, so next one. This is probably one of the last videos I think I have here. I'm going to present. April 30th, 1978. What I'm about to show now, this tornado that occurred at Piedmont, Oklahoma on April 30th, 1978, may have been the first ever captured on videotape. Let me just go to the comments real quick. Hello, Farmer Binderoy. Thanks for tuning in. But yeah, this one I'm about to show may have been the first ever captured on videotape. And believe me, once again, this may have been almost over a decade after the Wichita Falls, Texas tornado footage, but cameras were still relatively large, even in 1978. So give it just a few seconds here.
When you can talk, weather needs to know where that is.
Where is that? It's not on the ground. It's about 10 miles northeast of El Reno. It's not on the ground yet, but it's about 10 miles northeast of El Reno, it looks like.
Now, this was a relatively very small tornado. It's not roping out. It was just a very small one. Classic supercell right there.
What do you need? I need a tripod or something. That's what I need.
Got one?
Supercell, I love it.
Put that recorder in here.
Don't have to take it from the beginning.
It's the beginning. I'm just going to try to hold it steady here.
That's huge. tornado just disappeared, so it got out of the sea. So. Yeah, it's like a giant barrel almost. See that? It's really rotating. Look at the structure of that snow.
We're too close, we can get away now. Tell them we're at 3 and 4 again.
Yeah, we're at highways 3 and 4 again. I think we're going to sit here until something happens.
At this point, I think another tornado develops.
If we get out of the way, it'll just run microwave.
Stop right here. Cool. What do you see over there to the other side? Anything?
Yep, another funnel cloud.
Slow it down, there's one forming out here. Slow it down, easy. 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 There we go. Stop. Slow.
You have the wall cloud, and then you have the tornado developing. Right behind that is the rain shaft. Off to the left, you have that clear area that's called the rain-free base.
I think we find one location.
We don't have time. I know we don't have time. Turn off the engine, it's shaking. You might want to keep a watch out of Douglas too.
2 minutes left of this.
My God.
KQB 37 to Mike.
Yeah.
You seeing any right now?
We got a doozy right in front of us, right to the side of us.
Okay, well, they said it's heading towards Highway 3, still going in the direction of Piedmont. So you might be right in line of it.
I think it's moving a little bit to our side. We're right at Highway 3, and that's where it's going.
10-4. Have you been able to get any more tape?
We're shooting on him.
Yeah, we're shooting on everything right now.
10-4. If you think you're going to need some help back here when you get back, let me know. I'll go on volunteers.
10-4, thanks a lot.
You can be in for something.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Okay, I forgot to add a fade in on that. So when we were talking earlier about the tri-state tornado, how that one is the deadliest tornado in U.S. history, now you're probably wondering, what was the deadliest tornado in world history in this case? Obviously, we're not going to go too much detail in because I definitely would want to wrap this up. Now, we fast forward over a decade later, April 26, 1989. The deadliest tornado the world has ever known was the Dalapur-Satarya tornado that occurred in Makinganj district, Bangladesh, on April 26, 1989. While it was destructive and extremely deadly, there is, however, great uncertainty about the death toll. Officials estimate from the World Meteorological Organization that it killed approximately 1,300 people, which would make it the deadliest tornado in world history. In addition, 12,000 people were injured. It caused tremendous damage across a 58 square mile area with 3 upazilas, with Satarya being hardest hit. Its path was about 50 miles long and 1 mile wide. A World Meteorological Organization newsletter noted the tornado as F3 on the Fujita scale. However, the stated wind estimate of 210 to 260 miles an hour would rank it as an F4. In 2022, this tornado's status as the deadliest tornado in history was challenged, claiming it did not kill more than 256 people. The tornado affected the cities of Dalapur and Satarya the most, moving east through Dalapur and eventually northeast into Satarya. Previously, the area that the tornado had been hit, the tornado hit had been in a state of drought for 6 months. Now, I did learn that tornadoes, surprisingly, are not uncommon in that part of Asia. Bangladesh has experienced other tornadoes before and afterwards, but this was undoubtedly the worst one to have ever affected the country. Now, we're going to fast forward just a year later and get this. This is actually an area that this next one I'm about to say is actually from within my area, believe it or not. August 28th, 1990. As far as warnings were becoming more advanced over the last number of years, this was never more evident than when the warnings failed to come. On the afternoon of August 28, 1990, the skies over northern Illinois convulsed with thunderstorms. And I have such a connection with this storm because even though I was not around in 1990, this was an area that I'm about to bring up that affected pretty close to where I live. And this just happened 3 years before I was born. The storms produced a tornado first near Pecatonica in Winnebago County, about 15 miles west of Rockford, that touched down at about 1:42 p.m. That tornado did not last long, however, as the storm continued to move southeast toward the Aurora area and spawned 4 short-lived predecessor tornadoes in southwestern Kane County between 2:45 and 3:15 p.m. In parts of the Chicago area, residents were advised to take cover as a tornado could possibly be imminent. But the warning, however, came too late, At 3:15 p.m., more than a half hour before the sirens, an immense F5 tornado touched down on the Chicago suburb of Plainfield, which is just an hour where I live. That is actually, surprisingly, there are no photographs or video footage of this tornado. Despite that, this was around the time when films of people were filming them on a regular basis throughout the 1990s. Well, that's because this tornado was primarily rain wrapped, and so nobody could see it. This is what you could see from one of the very few video pieces, maybe not necessarily of the tornado itself, but a funnel cloud that could have been a predecessor to the Plainfield tornado. That's pretty much, as far as I know, the only image involving the Plainfield tornado that is known. So, anyways, bodies were thrown into nearby cornfields. Semi-trucks were overturned, some of which were thrown over 100 yards, and the steeple of St. Mary's Catholic Church was hurled to the ground. At Plainfield High School, the administration building was obliterated. The school itself was hit with the staff inside. And there it is, Plainfield High School. 2 teachers and a janitor were killed, though it could have been much worse. The very next day, the school year was scheduled to begin. Hello, Ed. So the very next day, the school year was scheduled to begin. Had the tornado come a day later, 1,000 students would have been inside this building. 28 people died and over 300 were injured. The weather, and it's still shocking, just knowing how many people died and knowing that which area it affected, because unlike the other events that we were talking about, this is not 1920 we're talking about. This is not 1950 or 1970 or 1960. This is 1990 we're talking about here. But it says the Weather Service had spotted the potential for tornadoes as early as 1 o'clock, 2 hours before the touchdown. But then they hesitated. Lately, they had come under fire for issuing too many warnings, many of which were followed by a funnel cloud that failed to touch down, or by no tornado at all. I think basically what the issue was is that if forecasters suspect that there's a tornado in the area and they issue a warning, and there is no tornado in sight, or people sense that there is no danger involved, you basically at that point have the weather forecasters and meteorologists essentially just cry wolf. So obviously, not only is it just that there may have been no tornado at all, or even if it hit somewhere else, it was still crying wolf in the end. The tragedy added a new phrase to the Weather Service lexicon. It's called the Plainfield Syndrome, that it's better to issue too many warnings than one too few. Just a brief mention of history here too now. For another year, we're almost done. We got 3 or 4 more, I believe. 2007. In February 2007, the Fujita scale was decommissioned and replaced with the Enhanced Fujita scale, EF scale, in the United States. So in case some people wonder why I say F scale or EF scale. The scale has the same basic design as the original Fujita scale, 6 intensity categories from 0 to 5, representing increasing degrees of damage. It was revised to reflect better examinations of tornado damage surveys in order to align wind speeds more closely associated with associated storm damage, better standardizing and elucidating what was previously subjective and ambiguous. It also adds more types of structures and vegetations, expands degrees of damage, and better accounts for variables such as differences in construction quality. An EF unknown, EFU, category was later added for tornadoes that cannot be rated due to a lack of damage evidence. As with the original Fujita scale, the Enhanced Fujita scale is a damage scale and only an estimate for actual wind speeds. While the wind speeds associated with the damage listed did and had not undergone empirical analysis such as detailed physical or any numerical modeling. Due to expensive costs, the wind speeds were obtained through a process called expert elicitation, which was based on various engineering studies since the 1970s, as well as from the field experience of meteorologists and engineers. Unlike the original Fujita scale, ratings on the enhanced Fujita scale are based solely off the effects of 3-second gusts on any given damage indicator. It has also been in use in France since 2008, albeit modified slightly by using damage indicators that take into account French construction standards, native vegetation, and the use of metric units. In April 2013, Canada adopted the EF scale over the Fujita scale, along with 31 specific damage indicators used by Environment Canada in their ratings. The EF scale is also unofficially used in other countries, including China and Brazil. In Brazil, the EF scale is used by the reporting platform and voluntary network of severe storm observers, PREVOTS, since June of 2018. Similarly, the Japanese implementation of the scale is also modified along similar lines. The Japanese variant is referred to locally in Japan as the JEF, or Japanese Enhanced Fujita Scale. Just 3 more events to go through. Super Outbreak 2, April 25th to 28th, 2011. The 2011 super outbreak, as opposed to the 1974 outbreak, was the largest, costliest, and one of the deadliest tornado outbreaks ever recorded, taking place in the southern, midwestern, and northeastern United States from April 25th to 28th, 2011, leaving catastrophic destruction in its wake. Over 175 tornadoes struck Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee, which were the most severely damaged states. Other destructive tornadoes occurred in Arkansas, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, New York, and Virginia, with some storms also affecting other states in the southern and eastern United States. In total, 367 tornadoes were confirmed by NOAA's National Weather Service and Government of Canada's Environment Canada in 21 states from Texas to New York to southern Canada. Widespread and destructive tornadoes occurred on each day of the outbreak. April 27th was the most active day with a record 223 tornadoes, touching down that day from midnight to midnight. 4 of the tornadoes were rated EF5, which is the highest ranking on the enhanced Fujita scale. Typically, these tornadoes are recorded no more than once a year. In total, 348 people were killed as a result of the outbreak, including 324 tornado-related deaths across six states and 24 fatalities caused by other thunderstorm-related events such as straight-line winds, hail, flash flooding, or lightning. In Alabama alone, 238 tornado-related deaths were confirmed by the Storm Prediction Center and the state's Emergency Management Agency. April 27th, 316 fatalities were the most tornado-related fatalities in the United States in a single day since the tri-state outbreak. Nearly 500 preliminary local storm reports were received for tornadoes over 4 days, including 292 in 16 states on April 27th alone. This event was the costliest tornado outbreak in United States history, with total damage reaching $10.2 billion, equivalent to $14 billion in today's dollars. Then just a month later, on May 22nd in 2011, during the evening hours of Sunday, May 22nd, 2011, a large and devastating EF5 tornado, known most commonly as the Joplin tornado or Joplin EF5, struck the city of Joplin, Missouri, causing catastrophic damage to it and the surrounding regions. As part of a larger late May sequence of tornadic activity, this extremely violent tornado began just west of Joplin at around 5:37 p.m. and quickly reached a peak intense width of nearly 1 mile as it tracked through the southern part of the city, before later impacting rural Jasper and Newton counties and dissipating after 48 minutes on the ground at 6:28 p.m. The tornado was on the ground for a total of 21 miles. The tornado devastated a large portion of the city of Joplin, damaging nearly 8,000 buildings, and of those destroying over 4,000 houses. The damage, which included major facilities like one of Joplin's 2 hospitals, as well as much of its basic infrastructure, amounted to a total of $2.8 billion, which is equivalent, again, to $4 billion in today's dollars, making the Joplin tornado the costliest single tornado in U.S. history. The increased payout was the highest in Missouri history, breaking the previous record of $2 billion from the hailstorm of April 10, 2001. The tornado was the 5th out of 6 total EF5s that occurred in 2011, with 4 having occurred a month earlier, as I just mentioned, during the 2011 super outbreak, and only 2 days before the same outbreak sequence produced another EF5 in El Reno, Oklahoma on May 24th. Overall, the tornado killed 158 people, including 8 indirect deaths, and injured some 1,150 others, making it the deadliest tornado of 2011. It ranks as the deadliest tornado in Missouri, in addition to being one of the deadliest in the United States, having the highest death toll since the Glacier Woodward F5 tornado in Texas and Oklahoma in 1947, and the 7th deadliest overall in the U.S. It was the first F5/EF5 tornado to occur in Missouri since May 20th, 1957, when an F5 tornado destroyed several suburbs of Kansas City, and only the second F5/EF5 tornado in Missouri since 1950. It was the third tornado to strike Joplin since May of 1971. All right, 2 more to go. May 31st, 2013. On May 31st, 2013, an extremely large, powerful, and erratic tornado occurred over rural areas of central Oklahoma during the early evening hours. This rain-wrapped multiple vortex tornado was the widest ever recorded and was part of a larger weather system that produced dozens of tornadoes over the preceding days. The tornado initially touched down at 6:03 p.m. at about 8.3 miles west-southwest of El Reno, rapidly growing in size and becoming more violent as it tracked through central portions of Canadian County. Remaining mostly over open terrain, the tornado did not impact many structures. However, measurements from mobile weather radars revealed extreme winds in excess of 313 miles per hour within the vortex. These are among the highest observed wind speeds on Earth, just slightly lower than the wind speeds of the 1999 Bridge Creek Moore tornado. As it crossed US 81, it had grown to a record-breaking width of 2.6 miles wide, being the previous width record set in 2004. There it is right there. It's just hard to believe that, again, that this is a tornado. Much like the tri-state one, it doesn't even look like a tornado. It looks nothing more than a giant wall. Turning northeastward, the tornado soon weakened. Upon crossing Interstate 40, the tornado dissipated around 6:43 p.m. after tracking for 16 miles. It avoided affecting the more densely populated areas near and within the Oklahoma City metropolitan area. Now, tragically, what was probably devastating and equally unbelievable was that this tornado killed 4 storm chasers, 3 professional and 1 amateur, the first known deaths in the history of storm chasing. Oh, there we go. I was trying to get the picture up. Yeah, 3 professional and 1 amateur, the first known deaths in the history of storm chasing. Prior to that, there had been other storm chasers that had died, as a result of storm chasing, but most of the time it was usually involving, car accidents or they were slipping on the road if the road was like, slippery and slick from all the rain and hail, or rare occasions livestock and whatnot, or some occasions people not wearing their seatbelts. So there have been, but this was the first in the history of storm chasing where tornadoes were actually directly killed by tornadoes. And once again, this is a picture of it from Simon Brewer, which I want to thank once again for letting me borrow his picture. Now, although the tornado remained mostly over open terrain, dozens of storm chasers, unaware of its immense size and erratic movement, were caught off guard. Near US 81, TwistX scientist and engineer Tim Samaras, along with his son Paul and research partner Carl Young, died in the tornado. Paul Samaras and Young were ejected from their Chevrolet Cobat by the storm's sub-vortex, while Tim was still buckled in the passenger seat. Local resident Richard Henderson, who decided to follow the storm, lost his life in that same area. He snapped a picture, which is that picture right here, of the tornado from his cellular phone before it struck him. That was just taken right before he died. Other chasers, including Mike Bettis of the Weather Channel and Reed Timmer, were either injured or had their vehicles damaged. A Doppler on wheels based analysis of how the tornado impacted these teams revealed they were hit by an intense internal sub-vortex. Overall, the tornado was responsible for 8 fatalities and 151 injuries. Due to the ferocity and sheer size, as well as its irregular movement and the deaths linked with this tornado, it has become one of the most studied and infamous tornadoes ever. The National Weather Service referred to the tornado as the most dangerous tornado in storm observing history. Alongside rush hour traffic, thousands of residents in Oklahoma City attempted to outrun the storm by taking to the roads in an attempt to drive out of the tornado's projected path. By attempting to escape by vehicle, in direct contrast to the recommended plan of action which most people in Oklahoma usually would follow, especially in Oklahoma City. Residents put themselves at great risk from the storm. Had the tornado maintained itself and passed over the congested freeways, good likely chance more than 500 lives could have been lost. And oops, I didn't mean to do that. And finally, we're down to the last event. Let me just get to the comments real quick. Hang on one second here. April 2nd, we had one tornado hit 800 yards north of me at 3:30. Oh man, that had to have been terrible. I can only, especially when it happens late at night. Jeez. I'm just checking real quick. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, Farmer Binderoy said, I remember Joplin, Missouri, that pushed a hospital off its hospital foundation. Yeah, I think I've actually seen that. It was quite a powerful twister. And now we get to the most recent event, which was also probably the closest in terms to the tri-state tornado of 1925. December 10th, 2021. Throughout the evening hours, a large and destructive tornado struck areas in and around the cities and communities of Monette and Leachville in Arkansas, Braggadocio and Haiti in Missouri, and Tiptonville and Sandburg in Tennessee, killing 8 people and injuring 16 others. The tornado was the second strongest and third deadliest of a massive tornado outbreak of December 10th to 11th, 2021. The tornado reached peak intensity twice. The first time east of Braggadocio, if I'm saying that correctly, and the second time in Tiptonville, leading the National Weather Service to assign a rating of low and EF4 on the enhanced Fujita scale, with maximum wind speeds estimated at 170 miles per hour. Early estimates suggested that the tornado family, identified by some media outlets as a quad-state tornado due to the storm's long track extending into Kentucky and its similarity to another tornado from 100 years ago, the 219-mile tri-state tornado of 1925, which there is kind of a similarity between the two. Oh my goodness. That was weird. I don't know why it was oh, damn it. Okay. I didn't mean to. Okay, so this was actually the okay, I got to get rid of that slide as soon as I get off here. Sorry about that, guys. So then on December, let's try this again. Then on December 10th, 2021, around the city. Okay, I don't even need to read that. This tornado family was often identified by some media outlets as a quad state tornado due to the storm's long track extending into Kentucky and its similarity to the tri-state tornado might have cut a path of up to 250 miles across the affected areas, making it the longest track tornado in history. The tornado ended up killing 8 people and injuring 16 others. However, storm surveys found that the majority of the storm's path consisted of 2 distinct EF4 tornadoes, the tri-state tornado and the western Kentucky tornado. So these are two, as similarly as they look, these are actually 2 different tornadoes right there. Which also, this one in particular, which I think was even far more devastating, I think this was the worst one compared to the 2021 tri-state one. It lasted over 2 hours, and this one's often referred to as the Beast. Usually either Western Kentucky tornado or the Beast. So, of course, in addition, it also had 3 short-lived and weak tornadoes in between them in northwestern Obion County, Tennessee. The parent supercell that produced the 2 EF4 tornadoes and 11 tornadoes in total later became known as the quad state supercell. In total, the outbreak killed 89 people plus 6 indirect deaths and injuring 676. So, real quick, just to kind of wrap this up to get back to the tri-state tornado, it is also shown that 100 years after the tri-state tornado, the ways of the twister remain mysterious and largely unpredictable. Even today, the Great Tornado of 1925 baffles meteorologists. Many believe that it could not have been a single storm, as tornadoes are not supposed to last for 4 hours and cover over 230 miles. There has been long uncertainty as to whether the originally recognized reports of a 235-mile path over 3.5 hours represent a single continuous tornado or multiple independently tracking tornadoes belonging to a tornado family. Because of the scarcity of verifiable meteorological data from the time of the event and the apparent absence of any record of a tornado having approached this path length and duration in the years since, doubts have been raised about the plausibility of the conclusion that a single tornado was responsible for them. To date, no definitive conclusion has been reached, and a complete understanding of what occurred remains unachieved. The tornado also has the record for the longest path ever recorded, though the exact length is uncertain, beginning from the first recorded tornado damage in Shannon County, Missouri, and ending with the last recorded damage near Oatsville, Indiana. The total length is approximately 235 miles, with several gaps in damage reports that could indicate breaks in the path. There are mostly continuous damage reports from south of Fredericktown in Madison County, Missouri, to the end of the accepted path of 10 miles northeast of Princeton and far western Pike County, Indiana. This suggests a path length of at least 174 miles, still the longest confirmable path length ever recorded. Modern meteorological theory regarding tornado and supercell morphology and dynamics suggests that a single tornado lasting for such a duration is highly improbable. I mean, let's face it, tornadoes usually stay on the ground and last anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes at most, and travel usually only 4 miles at the most. However, several other historical accounts of very long track, otherwise VLT tornadoes, have subsequently been determined to be the product of tornado families, notably the Charleston-Mattoon, Illinois tornado family of May 1917, and the Woodward, Oklahoma tornado family of April 1947. In more recent years, some VLT tornadoes, such as also the one I just mentioned about the quad state and supercells, have indeed occurred, with 12 tornadoes exceeding 100-mile path lengths from 1980 to 2012 and 60 since 1950. Yet the high-end estimates of the tri-state tornado path length are still far longer than the nearest verified VLT tornado. No single factor accounts for the exceptional path length and duration, though the fast-forward motion of the tornado, which averaged 59 miles per hour or 62 miles per hour, may have translated to more distance covered. In 2001, tornado expert Tom Grzillas wrote that the first 60 miles of the track was probably the result of 2 or more tornadoes, and that a 157-mile segment of the overall path length was seemingly continuous. Exhaustive research published in 2013 found no definitive resolution, but did locate additional tornado sightings and damage 15 miles west of the previously known beginning of the tornado and 1 mile east of the previously known ending, once again extending the total path length by 16 miles to 235 miles long. The scientists concluded it is likely that at least some of the track, both the beginning and ending, was indeed caused by separate tornadoes. They also located a 20-mile path, apparently created within a period of about 20 minutes, from a large tornado which was likely spawned from the same supercell and was about 65 miles east-northeast of the aforementioned path ending. This brings, if that's the case, like of the entire path length, involving not just this tornado, but any other additional tornadoes that were spawned by the same supercell, this brings the known length of the tri-state tornado family to around 320 miles over nearly 5.5 hours, which is just unbelievable. The 2013. Okay, so let me hang on 1 second here. I just want to make sure. Okay. The 2013 study concluded with moderate confidence that the 174-mile segment from central Madison County, Missouri to Pike County, Indiana was the result of one continuous tornado, and high confidence that the 151-mile segment from central Bollinger County, Missouri to western Pike County, Indiana was the result of a single continuous tornado. The first value would hold the record for the longest and recorded tornado track, but the latter would be second behind the 165-mile track of the western Kentucky tornado. Another extremely long-tracked violent tornado which occurred obviously in 2021. However, the 151 to 174-mile long figures for the path are considered most likely to be continuous because observations were sufficiently dense, whereas the 35-mile long figure from western Reynolds County, Missouri to westernmost westernmost Pike County, Indiana, owing primarily to sparse patterns of human settlement. But this may well have been continuous because the alignment of reports showing consistent heading suggested of a single tornado rather than a family. So, in other words, there is no viable evidence to show that the damage path really ever truly evaded. So I think, in my personal opinion, I think it probably would have been quite a remarkable coincidence to have a multi-tornado family to go as far as that type of distance. Although there are times where sometimes I find it awfully hard to believe that this was one single tornado. And I've talked to a lot of other people and they've all said the same thing. But it's really hard to say for the most part. Hey, Lauren, you're here. I only got a few minutes left, but I'm glad you're here, though. Great to have you tune in. So, therefore, in other words, many still believe that it was 3 or 4 separate tornadoes growing out of each other. On the other hand, it seemed to leave the path of a lone killer. And it's just still hard to believe that this actually, if it was a single tornado that traveled 235 miles, to this day, if that was the case, there is no logical explanation for it. A supercell thunderstorm, as we know it, while the supercell can last for hours and even travel that far a distance, a supercell thunderstorm spawned tornado just can't do that. It cannot create a 200 plus mile path. It just doesn't make any sense. The Great Tri-State Tornado remains an historically anomaly of terrifying proportions. Never before or since have we seen a tornado in the United States kill so many people, stay on the ground so long, travel so quickly, or cause so much damage. Understandably overshadowed by the great tragedy to the north, the outbreak across Kentucky and Tennessee may well have been very significant in itself. The overwhelming devastation across the areas affected left marks that took decades to heal. Tens of thousands of people left homeless. Many of them also rendered jobless just years before the Great Depression closed its grip on the nation. Even in light of devastating tornadoes and outbreaks in recent years, it's difficult to make sense of the incredible scale of destruction. The full details of that day are likely lost to the march of time, but March 18th, 1925, undoubtedly remains one of the greatest natural disasters in American history. So, today, 100 years later, surprisingly few people outside of the tri-state area that was directly affected by the storm have ever even heard of the 1925 tri-state tornado. It has largely disappeared into history, obscured by the passage of annual killer tornadoes and nearly a century of other severe weather events, which is why the nickname of this incredible one-of-a-kind tornado is now the Forgotten Storm. All I got to say, too, just before we end things, too, is just we kind of wonder, will we eventually meet its equal, in the next century, which we kind of already did, in this case for Missouri, Arkansas, and Tennessee, and to some degree Western Kentucky. But if this tornado if it crossed the original path, and let's say if it crossed the exact same path of this tornado, I just know there was a mistype in Illinois, of knowing what would happen if this tornado struck today. I think the storm itself would certainly appear on radar as a spectacular entity that every siren, every police car, every weather station, radio station, even newspapers and phones across southern Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and to a more bigger degree, western Kentucky and Tennessee would be blaring an hour ahead of time. Every television station, every radio station, every phone, every weather internet page would let people know that this thing was coming. I mean, in other words, if that tornado had truly happened today, yes, early warning systems definitely would have saved lives. The fatality rate definitely would not be nearly as high. Would not be as high as nearly 700. But it still would have been half of that, or even at least a quarter of that. But yeah, like I said, it has largely disappeared. Oh wait, hang on one second. Yeah, so I'll say it again. I should have said it. Yeah, so it has largely disappeared into history, obscured by the passage of annual killer tornadoes and nearly a century of other severe weather events, which is why the nickname of this one-of-a-kind tornado is now the Forgotten Storm. It's also sometimes dubbed at times the king of all tornadoes. And finally, to end this clip, to end this slideshow, I got one final clip to show, which is from the documentary from 1997. This is actually the end of this documentary, so this is a perfect way to end it. And we'll finally close the book on this one. Here we go.
And the now elderly survivors of that long ago March afternoon still look at the clouds in the sky, searching for a sign that the dark enigma will once again descend on the towns and schools of Tornado Alley.
And that is officially it. We are officially done. So, let's see here. Oh, that's right. Mayfield. That's what it was. Yeah. Well, we finally got through with it. We did it. That was a really good slideshow. I don't know about you guys, but that was totally worth doing. It was a lot of fun. Great time talking about it. And I just want to thank for everybody that has tuned in, for showing your commitment and most importantly, paying homage. Well, not paying homage. I would say tuning in to commemorate this tragic event that occurred 100 years ago. As far as I know, for this slideshow, I won't, unlike I do with Galveston, this is one I'm probably not going to do exactly every single year. Way I see it is I'll probably do it again maybe another 5 years from now, in the case like with, for the 105th anniversary, or if we happen to be going down to those areas of southern Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, that, hope maybe I'll do it again some point soon. But in the meantime, after I get off this, I am going to make the corrections to fix that all up. But I definitely want to thank everyone who's tuned in. Jill, you've been here this entire time. That's awesome. Thank you so much. You're very welcome. And thanks for staying. Thanks for sitting in and watching. I really appreciate it. See who else we got. Thank you, Allison. I appreciate it as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Farmer Binderoy. You have a good night. You have a good rest of your evening. For next week, I'm not sure if I'm going to have a show by then. I'm still kind of deciding. I'm kind of in between presentations right now, but even though I'm kind of in between, in some way, shape, or form, that's actually a good thing because I have a lot more slideshows in mind. In fact, actually, come to think of it now, and this is something that I was hoping Sam unfortunately was not able to join. She wanted to actually explore the paranormal aspects of the tri-state tornado. So even though this slideshow is officially completed and we're officially done with this, we're still going to focus on locations that did have some part of the tri-state tornado. Obviously, I'm not going to necessarily make an official part 4. I'm just going to kind of make it a separate type of slideshow, but it will be still focusing on locations that were connected to it. Surprisingly, there weren't that many haunted locations as I thought there was going to be, but there were still quite a few of them, and there are some surviving structures that still stand. And that is, I think, among one of the reasons why, if you guys probably didn't hear about this, Jeremy, who was watching one of these parts the other night, has now taken an interest in wanting to go down to southern Illinois and Indiana, as well as southern Missouri, too. I don't know exactly when this is going to happen. I really hope we can do it this year. I got to talk to Jeremy more about this, but we're thinking about in some way, shape, or form, possibly retracing the path of that tornado from Shannon County, Missouri, all the way to southern western Pike County, Indiana. Of course, the biggest areas, if we decide to do some type of investigations or whatnot, obviously would have to be in Murfreesboro and DeSoto, Illinois. Although I did find out, and I'll save this for a later time, for a later show, and I'm so crushed because if only I knew about it, and if it wasn't so far away, I would have loved to have gone down there. They actually did a paranormal investigation at a former school building that is a survivor of the tri-state tornado. They did it on the night of the 100th anniversary. So when I found out about it, I was just crushed. I'm thinking, oh my God. But that doesn't mean that we can't ever investigate it in general. So I do have the locations down. I haven't made any documents or slideshows of them yet, but I'm hoping if I do have some time, it's going to be a little bit difficult because obviously this weekend is Easter weekend, not to mention we have Good Friday, and I have a couple other things I got to do throughout this week. But if I do have some spare time, I'm going to try to create at least a couple slideshows of the locations that I was able to find information about, and we'll see where things go from there. And we'll may not be much, but we're definitely gonna try to look at much of the paranormal aspect of the tri-state tornado as we can, and see what we can get out of it. But until then, I've been going on now for almost 3 hours. This is probably undoubtedly the longest Nick Files episode I think I've done so far. But once again, guys, I want to thank you guys so much. And of course, thank you guys so much for waiting for me to bring back the show following my work accident, which I just want to let everybody know I'm doing a lot better. My leg is still relatively stiff and it has gotten sore at times, but it's definitely getting a lot better. Definitely. It's going to still take some time, but it's getting there slowly but surely. But thank you guys again so much. I just want to get to these last comments right here. Love you too, Jill. Always glad that you always appreciate when you support the show. Thank you so much. So love you too. Yes, you're welcome. Thanks again, Allison. That would be awesome. Look forward to seeing Sam here again. Great. Yeah, that was her idea. Sam, like I said, unfortunately was unable to make it. She's actually in Scotland right now. So I'm going to try to reach out to her sometime later this week and see if she'll be available for next week. But again, I got to get off here because, again, I've been doing this for nearly 3 hours. My water is low. You can't even see it. My water is low, so I really need a drink after all this talking. Thank you guys again so much. And, until next week, same time as usual. And also everyone, have a great, safe, and happy Easter. And I'll see some of you guys, of course, also on Supernatural Talk tomorrow night. And also one more thing. I almost forgot. I haven't put word about this out yet. I'm going to send this into the network chat. Jill, in case if you want to join, you're more than welcome to. But I got to talk to Joe, and I actually came up with this idea. The fact that it's also April, it's Autism Awareness Month. And as someone who has autism myself, we were talking about this, in fact, on Fear Fans, me, Joe, and Don. And we are concerned about maybe doing an autism awareness special on the deck. So I'm not sure if it's going to be tomorrow or sometime next week, but I'm going to talk to Joe and see what he says. So we might do it tomorrow. If not, it will definitely be next week. But aside from that, I'll see some of you guys tomorrow night on Supernatural Talk. But if you'd rather wait for the next Nick Files episode, I guess I will see you guys next week, same time as usual. You guys all have a great night, and also have a great and happy Easter weekend. Take care, everyone.